Where was I? Well, I'll just go back since we were since we just started recording. But the CI/CD overview for what's changed. There hasn't been a major update to the content on this page, but there are a few new groups and categories that I'll highlight. The first is the templates group, which is responsible for templates within GitLab, but also onboarding and new user experiences. And so if you think about things like the new user who's coming in, they've got ML workflows, they've got mobile workflows, they've got a Rails application or pages, sites that they're managing. How do we help them find all the best features that are going to help them be successful? Templates are one way of doing that, but there's actually a ton of in-product guidance and kind of documentation improvements and other things that we haven't even thought of yet that can make that process easier, more productive, and get them to that first green build and then taking advantage of the powerful features of GitLab. So that will be the focus of that team. The other things that we've added are new categories for Jupyter Notebooks and Git LFS to package. So there isn't necessarily a ton that we're going to be delivering immediately in these categories, but they were things that we already have that we have good support for, but they were lacking a permanent home, and it made sense to add these to the package group. So Jupyter Notebooks is a place where you can store runbooks or other kinds of interactive notebooks. Jupyter Runbooks and Notebooks is a great product overall, so I'd recommend checking that out if you haven't. And then Git LFS, of course, is how you store large files in GitLab. Certain workflows like video game development and other kind of asset management, probably ML workflows as well, are really dependent on LFS to not have gigantic repos. So again, that makes sense to have in package, which ultimately is helping us to store and retrieve kind of binary blobs, and if you really kind of look at the fundamentals of it. And then finally, on the release side, we've made merge trains its own category. Merge trains is a really, really great feature that we want to drive more attention to. None of our competitors really have anything that's super comparable to it. And it's just really, really great. And that's why we've highlighted that. It's got its own strategy. Each of these, if you click on these, it'll take you to the section where you can then go look at the strategy for those categories. And they're all new, so they're first iterations, but you'll see those develop over time. And we would love to hear your feedback if you've got any suggestions how we can improve merge trains or notebooks or LFS or different things that the templates team can be working on. The templates team in particular, I wanted to highlight this get up and running quickly with GitLab CI epic, which I'll link to here, which is sort of the seed epic for this team and what they're going to work on. So I shared this a couple times on Twitter and other places and shared it with customers and things. And I've also been, whenever I notice an issue and come across something that's related to onboarding, I've been linking it into this epic. But you can see here, thanks to the sharing on Twitter, we've had a bunch of different customers jump in and share their experiences of what it was like to start using CI/CD with GitLab. We're going to be turning all of this into different issues and building out a plan for implementation over time with this. So this is going to be really, really great. We have an open rec for that position. We're looking to hire it as quickly as possible so that we can get moving with this stuff. Yeah, and then the other link will take you to the new templates group here, where you can see only the templates category so far. And a lot of these people are placeholders just copied from the CI group, but this is where this will start to get fleshed out. So I'll pause there. Are there any questions on my first section here? Great. If not, then I will turn it over to Jackie and James.
Hi. Okay, let me go ahead and present my screen so I can share the issue with you all. So James and I, within our CI/CD group, started to explore the release evidence that we've made available in 12.6, and including things like test results for our customers to add to the release object, helping really fortify that data asset within inside GitLab for everything release oriented. James, I would love to hear from your perspective what this would do from your test side if you're on the call.
Yeah, so this really goes hand in hand with some capabilities that we're looking at of storing test results historically, and then being able to leverage that when someone is in like an audit cycle, and being able to tie from the merge request and looking at the pipeline in their collection of evidence or their sample of evidence all the way back to the test results, and seeing that those automated tests are being run, that they're not failing and just being skipped. So it's really going to help, we think, leverage storing that data and being able to use it in multiple ways. So it really fits into our, do things powerfully theme, we think, of do something once and be able to use it a couple of times. So really excited about this effort.
And it's also interesting as it relates back to another stages group with requirements management, of being able to kind of create this integrated view of an issue, a merge request, a test plan, and what that means from plan versus delivery. And that's this issue. Any questions?
Okay, then we will go over to questions, although it doesn't look like there are any. So maybe Jackie and Gabe, you can share the read-only comment and just highlight why that would be interesting to read.
Sure. So Gabe and I started some conversations around time boxes that are now looking at being available on the plan side of GitLab. And one kind of friction point was, if we look at release orchestration as being able to plan releases and coordinate them, does that usurp or potentially conflict with how one would schedule time boxes or planning in GitLab? So what we've started to consider is looking at time boxes being the representation of a plan, and then the release object being a representation of delivery. So you'd be able then to create this metric suite or this view of a plan versus actuals delivery point for a user in GitLab, tying together this vision of, hey, your whole pipeline in GitLab from what you thought you're going to be delivering to what you're delivering, and the metrics that Gabe is offering out of capacity planning and what you could really render from a GitLab value proposition.
Very cool. Yeah, that's a really interesting topic to explore. Last chance for any questions. This meeting is really for all of you. Is there anything that's been on your mind that you want to ask product, and we'd be happy to answer?
I'll ask a question.
Oh, sorry.
If no one else wants to. Sorry if I just cut someone off. So real quick, this is a thought that has been rolling around in my head as we've been talking about applying merge trains to the main GitLab Rails app. And one of the challenges we run into with that is sort of there's a bit of like flaky tests or tests that need to be, whatever. There's some amount of like not as reliable as we want it to be in our test build. And I've looked around for this a little bit. I've not seen it. I'm curious, and maybe this is in the testing group. Is there any discussions going on about some sort of feature in which we actually like are tracking test failures in some sort of database, and then like being able to surface that to a customer in a way that says like, your build's a little bit flaky, or here's the reliability of your build, and these are the tests that are sort of flapping back and forth and things like that.
Yeah, Darby, we have a couple of issues open for that. We've kind of split that into a couple of efforts. One will be just identification, like being able to look at historically those results and see if a retry is just fixing those tests. We think that that's a good first step or an MVC into this. The second then being automatically, or in being able to let users check that flag to just automatically disable flaky tests. The other thing that we're kicking around is, what if you just run those flaky tests first and do the retry? And so we think that, we can play around with that, maybe internally, dog food it, and see if like we're manually pushing those things up. Is that going to help those pipelines run faster, so that, you have less developer sword fighting time and more developer working time?
I like the metaphor. Cool. I like it. Thanks.
Yeah, I can send you those issues or drop them into the doc so you can take a look. We'd love feedback on them.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. My question was, can you share a bit more context around Git LFS moving into the package stage? I don't know if there's an issue or meeting notes or video where maybe that was discussed. It'd be great to get a link to that, or even if you could just share a summary now on just some more of the thought process. It's I'll give you my reaction or thought is that yeah, it makes a lot of sense because you're talking about a repository of things which fits well in the package, but also seems orthogonal to the other types of packages. So if we were trying to create like a system where people store like a lot of different types of packages, like NuGet here and gems here, etc., that those could all sit on some type of like platform that was consistent. You would access those in maybe a consistent way, and they would have some consistent features. And then GitLFS feels like orthogonal to that work, which maybe it is, but that's kind of my thought process, and I'm wondering if there's just a bit more context.
Yeah. So the core of you're right on both counts, I think. And the thought process though was that storing large binary files has like a certain expertise that goes with it, and a certain management of cost, and certain thinking about the infrastructure that aligns more naturally to Tim's team, which is storing other large binary files and thinking about cost and tracking that and all of that. So that is really the reasoning. But you're right, there's a certain perspective where it's very, very different than anything else that's in package, where you aren't in a transaction kind of, well, separate from Git, I suppose, updating this and storing a binary that's got some kind of like metadata associated with it that you'll use later for deployment. This is just all right inside of Git. But yeah, that was the thinking why, is that the expertise is there for this sort of thing. Did I miss anything there, Tim?
I should just mention that we've also had some requests to build a generic package manager where people just want us to store arbitrary files. And one piece where that could come in handy is just as evidence for releases. So in that sense, it makes more sense too, because thinking about Git LFS and supporting arbitrary files, we'll need to build some way to upload those, store them, like Jason mentioned, the metadata, and then also being able to, set quotas and limits eventually and manage storage. So it makes sense that we're thinking about those problems holistically.
Yeah, and not just the evidence for the releases, but the releases themselves. Everybody's sort of looking for us to provide a solution there.
I was just going to say, from an engineering perspective, a lot of our categories in package sort of feel the same at their core, which is that sort of file upload and storage, large file upload and storage, and whatever flavor that is. I feel like that's a relatively consistent type of issue that we have to be able to handle well.
Hey, I had the next question, but it looks like Tao is currently typing. Would you like to answer that?
You should probably just ask the question for the recording.
Is watching just the video later?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, we're not screen sharing. My question was, do we already have issues open or plans for iterations on the new parent-child pipelines feature? If so, can we briefly cover the next thing?
Thanks for that question, Peyton. So other than the critical tech debt that we had to defer on to get the parent-child pipeline feature out for 12.7, so I do want to fast follow with those if there are any critical ones. So other than those, I would think and keep in mind these things are not planned in a milestone yet. I would think the next big thing that is on the topic of parent-child pipeline would be allowing the child pipeline to trigger its own child pipeline. Again, this is not work that's planned yet, but it is linked to the original parent-child pipeline story. And then a second thing I would think it would also follow under iterating on parent-child pipeline is expanding on the child-parent pipeline discoverability. That is also an issue. I'll drop the links to those issues in the agenda as soon as I can. Does that answer? Again, none of these are necessarily planned for an upcoming milestone, but those are the two that I can think of without having some chance ahead of time to research what we have.
I do have one to add as well, which is in 12.8, which is the includes as artifacts feature, which maybe it isn't an obvious connection with child parent pipelines from just the description, I guess, but together they unlock a very powerful thing. So child parent pipelines will allow a pipeline to trigger another pipeline as one of the jobs that's inside of it. It will just trigger the job based on the checked in GitLab CI YAML in whatever project or whatever it's doing. Allowing the include to be passed, or allowing an include to be passed as an artifact will enable a flow where you can have one job that generates a dynamic GitLab CI YAML, passes it to the job that triggers a pipeline, and then can run literally anything that was determined at runtime as a new pipeline. So there's a bunch of use cases that are solved by this. So for example, we had an issue around doing matrix builds where you've got, on one axis, you've got all of your environment targets, and you've got your applications or whatever on the other matrix, and then you sort of just need to build every combination of those. There's ways to build that through some different kinds of complex GitLab CI YAML syntaxes. But doing things in this way, allowing you to generate the YAML and then execute it as a child pipeline, is much, much simpler, and it keeps the complexity out of the GitLab CI YAML language or syntax, and it's just going to be really, really powerful. There's also DAG use cases related to this, where you're dynamically generating parts of the execution flow. There's a ton of use cases. If you look at the issue that I linked to, it talks about some of those in there, and also in the comments of some of the child parent pipeline ones. But yeah, that's going to be a really powerful thing that comes as a fast follow for child parent pipelines.
Thanks, Tal and Jason.
Any other questions? Last chance.
I just wanted to say hi. It's my 4th day, and I'm on the product market team, and looking forward to working with y'all, and very happy to be here. So if you want to do a coffee chat, shoot me a little Slack. I'm happy to meet you and talk about whatever.
Cool. You're just about to get 30 coffee chat invites, so
bring them on.
Nice.
At least 30.
At least. Great to have you.
At least 30. We'll just add you to all our existing coffee chats as well, Parker.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for the questions. And Chase, did you have one?
I just wanted to similar thing. This is my 2nd week, so same sentiments as Parker. Hello, everyone.
Cool. Welcome, Chase. And thanks, everybody, for the questions. It was a really interesting conversation. Have a good one.